Ok, rap futuristico. Rap futuristico.
Well, everybody, we're back on ForzaTimeFootball.com with another mini podcast type special thing. This time we have with us Mirror columnist and Sports Tonight Live presenter Mina Rzouki. Mina, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I could be better, to be honest, Mina. After the game with Croatia, things are a little bit tense around my house. Let's just say that.
Yes, I don't think many of us got any sleep last night, especially when we started to have nightmares of history repeating itself from 2004 and Croatia and Spain going into cahoots to get a 2-2 draw that would knock Italy out of the tournament.
No, I mean, let's not put things like that out there. I mean, the Croatia and Spain are two professional footballing sides that would never think about, I would say, fixing a result, but obviously, being this is an Italian football kind of thing, we don't do anything like that here at all.
Well, you know what? I've said this before. I think it would be a fabulous headline to have, match fixing Italy, dumped out of the competition by indeed match fixing. But I do think that Spain would worry about compromising their journey to the final by having that sort of lingering doubt that maybe they did fix a match with Croatia or played for a draw or just didn't really put all their efforts in. And for the history of their nation, that's not saying that Croatia won't also play to win, but for the history of the nation and them going forward and their reputation, it doesn't make sense. But it would make sense in the sense that they can get to knock out a huge rival of theirs in Italy, a team that they've never really appreciated and quite disgusted by their philosophy of anti-football, as they like to call it. But, they did ask Corriere dello Sport's readers, what they thought Croatia and Spain would do, and 57% of them thought they'd play for a 2-2 draw to knock Italy out of the competition. Now that's something.
Exactly. That's the Italian mentality of thinking the worst will happen, shall we say. But I can agree with in part of what you say. I think obviously Spain wouldn't want to compromise what they stand for, but then again, I think because that they have the chance to knock out their bogey team in a sense, that it would be too easy not to do it, if you know what I mean. But we shall move away from potential things that could happen. That we can talk about that after it's happened. But what are your thoughts, Mina, on the first two games that Italy have played so far? Obviously, a good draw against Spain, and then a not so good draw against Croatia.
Well, I actually think that they've really impressed in this tournament when you consider that most people thought they'd be the embarrassing team of Euro 2012. They've played in an effective way. They have some beautiful football, not your typical rigid, sort of boring, counter-attacking football, and it's like winning at all costs. It's different this time. There's an artistry involved there. It's quite creative. Cesare Prandelli prefers his ball-holding midfielders rather than just dynamic players that we saw, say, in 2010, like Simone Pepe. But the obvious difference is that they're lacking that mentality, and despite having so many of the Juve players there, they're all quite fatigued, and they're not playing really for the win or not trying to score more than the one goal. I mean, there was lots of Italian press afterwards yesterday that was saying after the game, you should have made more. You should have tried to score more than the 1-0. And the thing is they keep creating chances, but the finishing is absolutely terrible. And I don't know whether that's a sense of there's no more talent up top, or there's no agreement necessarily with Balotelli and Cassano, although I think there is. But it's a case of Italy sort of getting the 1-0 and sitting back a little, taking time to relax and recover their state at the moment. And that's bringing them so much trouble at the moment, because they don't have the energy to keep playing for 90 minutes. So they need to score quite a few if that's the attitude they have going into the second half.
We'll go into the game against Croatia. The first half, Italy were pretty good, created some good chances. Obviously, a magnificent Pirlo free kick gave the Azzurri the lead. But then in the second half, it kind of all fell apart, and I don't know if they crumbled under the pressure or just Croatia kind of moved up a gear. But what were your thoughts on the way Italy played in that game?
Well, I think this is the thing. I think at the moment that when you have players like Cassano, who can't really play a full 90 minutes, Di Natale, who can't play a full 90 minutes, players exhausted from a huge and quite hard season, especially for the Juventus ones who were trying to remain undefeated, that generally, obviously, there was always going to be a question of them being tired. And you can see that when they came out in the second half, Pirlo was not as effective as we saw. Croatia's tactics changed in the sense that Mandzukic was played in a deeper role. Luka Modric was moved out further to the wings. They started to press more, they started to apply pressure onto Italy, and they started imposing their physical strength, which is obviously the difference between those two. They are a much fitter side than the Italians are. And with Italy having to make substitutions, they're not bringing on players with as much talent as the starting 11. I also take issue with the fact that Riccardo Montolivo was brought on when Thiago Motta was taken off, when I thought that perhaps Giaccherini should have been taken off. He looked like he was suffering. Prandelli said that he took off Thiago Motta because he needed more balance in the midfield, as Giaccherini was suffering. So why not take off the player that was suffering and bring on another winger in the likes of Balzaretti? This didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I also thought that if you did want to balance the midfield, it would probably have been better to bring on a centre-back in Angelo Ogbonna and then move on Daniele De Rossi to midfield, take full advantage of all his capability in that role. And then you have a defender at the back who's capable of defending at the highest level. So for me, there were certain question marks with Prandelli's choices. Sebastian Giovinco came on. He didn't do anything outstanding. Neither did Di Natale. I would have much preferred a little bit of energy, a little pace. Maybe Nocerino should have been given a shout. But I'm not too sure about Giaccherini starting the next game against Ireland.
What do you think about the last game Italy have got against Ireland? Obviously, Giovanni Trapattoni, one of the greatest managers of all time, has the chance to kind of help Italy on their way to being knocked out if other results go against them. But do you think Italy have it in them to beat Ireland? Ireland in the last two games haven't been so good, but they don't have a very good record against Giovanni Trapattoni when they play against them.
Yeah, they do. But I mean, people talk a lot about this record, but it is 2 draws. It's not like, they've managed 3 wins over Italy in their last 3 games or anything like that. It is somewhat a special game for Prandelli, who sort of learnt under Giovanni Trapattoni at Juventus. And there is somewhat of a psychological element there, whether or not he can perform against the man who taught him so much. But I do think that this won't be a very difficult game for Italy, unless psychologically they become undone because of all the pressure. And they're not a team that usually doesn't perform under pressure. So in terms of midfield, Ireland is very easily outrun. They're easily outdone on pace. They don't really know how to keep something. They haven't proved to be a very disciplined side so far in the Euros. They've lots of individual errors, too much pressure on the back line. They invite too much pressure onto them. So I think with the Italian midfield and the fact that they love to pass the ball, they're very fluent attacking-wise. They have talent in Thiago Motta, Andrea Pirlo, Daniele. Like, so many of them know how to pass the ball brilliantly that it's going to be very hard for Ireland to catch up to them. They're going to be without possession for much of the game, so they're going to be exhausted. And if they bring on sort of great substitutes, Italy, towards the end, that's especially when they can get something, other than the fact that Ireland seems to concede always in the first 5 minutes of each half. So Balotelli or Cassano need to strike immediately if they have a chance of trying to qualify for the next round. But I think it can be done, I genuinely do. Although Trapattoni won't lie down, he will give them a fight.
So Mina, if I gave you an imaginary £20 or €20 and I said, Mina, £20, do you think Italy will qualify for the next round, especially given what we spoke about at the start with the fact that Spain and Croatia can play out a result which would knock them out? But would you put €20 on Italy qualifying?
If their fate was there in their own hands, then yes, for sure. But considering the fact that betting odds have been slashed when it comes on 2-2 for Croatia-Spain, they're not even, you don't even make that much money anymore if you bid on that. So I'm thinking, no, I wouldn't bid on them qualifying, no. I'm pessimistic about their chances.
Well, hopefully we will be celebrating after the Ireland game, but regardless of what happens, hopefully we'll get to speak to you after that and see what you thought about everything that went on.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to.